And welcome back. So we have talked about support and resistance and supply and demand, which are both concepts where we use horizontal areas or horizontal lines on our charts to identify key price areas or key price levels where there is a high chance of a market making a turn and giving us a transitioning signal. And now we will get started with trend lines. And trend lines are diagonal lines on our charts. And in our trading, we specifically look for the transitioning periods, and the trend lines can help us find those periods and pinpoint trade entries, as we will see later. And we mainly look for breaks of trend lines where the market goes from one market phase into the other, and trend lines are ideal here. And as you will see, we have a complete module just about a trend line pattern, which is a very versatile pattern. It can get us into many different types of reversal trades, many different types of market patterns. And so let's just get started. So stay patient. This is just a very basic introduction into trend lines, and you will see that we will build on this foundation step by step later on with additional videos, more advanced concepts, and step-by-step trade entry and trade timing lessons. So trend lines help us understand and describe trending markets and trending phases. So here is our trend line tool. Either you have it in your favorite bar, or if you don't have it yet there, you can find it here on the left hand side. Here the first one, give it a star, then it will appear here. And now we can grab it. And the basic rule for drawing trend lines in our trading is that when you have a downtrend, we connect the swing highs, and if we have an uptrend, then we connect the swing lows, and we then just wait for the break points of the trend lines, and I will show you that now. So as I said, trend lines can be used to describe price and trend structure, and we use trend lines and we draw trend lines by connecting the absolute swing highs. It does not have to be 100% precise. We just want to get a general feeling of confluence areas and to see where price action reacts to a trend line. So here is a downtrend. You can see that very clear swings, very nice swings. And with the help of the trend line, we can now try to understand and describe the price action a little bit better. So we start here with the highest high, and then we will see where we can get the most confluence, which means just that we draw our trend line in a way where we get the most confirmation signals and the most touch points. And another very basic rule is that we need at least 3 touch points on a trend line. You can always get 2 touch points on any trend line. You can always get 2 touch points by connecting any 2 random areas, but only if you have 3 touch points or 3 confluence areas, then this is a valid trend line. So here it is not 100% perfect, but you can see here we have the highest high, then we have this where we overshot the trend line a little bit, and as I said, it does not have to be 100% precise. We just want to get a general feel of the market. Here again, a very nice reaction then, and then so on. And then we can already see that there's another type of signal here on the trend line. It is not only the break here. When we zoom in a little bit, we are breaking here the trend line, which is our first transitioning signal that something is changing in the market direction. But we also have the flip zone. I've talked about that previously, and we will talk about that many more times because it's a very important pattern. So you can see here, price used this area as resistance before. We broke above it, came back into this, retested it as support now, and then we rallied from that. But at the same time, you can see that we retested also the trend line, and the trend line retest is another very important pattern that we will explore later also as well in more depth. So you can see the first signal that we look for in a trend line is that we look for a very strong break of the trend line. And in a later video in the foundation, the last video actually is the momentum shift signal, and there I will show you why we always need a very strong break of any transitioning pattern and any structure pattern. And in this case we have it. You can see very nice trend line. We break it with a high momentum candle here, which is then the signal that the market is done with the downtrend, and now we are starting a short-term rally after this trend line break. Then when we zoom out, we can see that there is then some type of a very slow uptrend. It is more or less a range market, but nevertheless we can probably get some type of longer term trend line here. And again, we start here by using the first low, then we have a little bit of an overreaction, nothing too bad. You can see we have our third touch point here, the fourth one. Here we overshot it a little bit, but this is still a confirmation signal of the trend line. If you see such a wick that is overshooting the trend line, it is not invalidating the trend line as long as we don't fully close and move away from the trend line. So you can see here another trend line that is describing a broader pattern, and you can see here after the break, again, we are having a very strong break here of the trend line. At the same time, you can see that we are here having some type of support area. In this area you can see that we have some type of wicks here. This area is also falling into this area. You can see here lots of reaction here, resistance, support, support, support. Then we break below it, came back into this, retested it from underneath as resistance, and then sold off. And you can see again with the trend line we can just add one more layer to our trading arsenal, to our toolkit, and you will later see that there are many different types of transitioning patterns, transitioning periods and market phases. So if we know how to use the trend line, and if we are able to use trend lines, then we can get into different trading opportunities where our other trading tools are not going to help us, and we will explore that later in our third trading pattern. Then here we have a pretty recent example. You can see again after this short-term downtrend, after the trend line and the support break, we moved lower. We then had a little bit of a long-term range here. We are slowly moving upwards, very large swings in between. It is not an ideal trend structure, but you can clearly see we are making higher highs. We are somewhat making higher lows as well, but we can already see if we just apply our trend wave knowledge, you can see that the highs are just barely making higher highs. Let's zoom in a bit. You can see each push just barely breaks above the previous highs. Sometimes we just get a double top, and you can see not a lot of conviction here behind the bullish moves, behind the bullish pushes into the highs. So this is our first tell that something here is not looking right. It is not favoring the bullish side of this market. And now let's get our trend line here. If we're looking for a short break or a short trade and after an uptrend, then we connect the lows here on such a market. We start here, the first low, then you can see the second, and we get a few confirmations here. You can see that here again, it is not a problem if price is overshooting it, as long as we are not closing below the trend line and pulling away. You can see a nice reactions here as well. So we have more than enough touch points here to validate the trend line. And again, just let's look at here. This is the transitioning period. Then once we have this very strong break, you can also see that in this area we had some type of horizontal support. Again, very clear. You can see lots of reactions, resistance, support, support, consolidation around that, support again and again, long support area. We break below that, we come back into it immediately with the next candle, we retested it successfully, we are pulling away again, closing below the green candle, which is then foreshadowing this down move, this new downtrend. And you can see that again with the helpline of the trend line, with our wave analysis knowledge, also support and resistance analysis, we can pinpoint a very likely shift where the market is likely to shift from an uptrend to a downtrend, especially then here with this high momentum break after this trend line has been broken. We can see that the buyers were not in control here in this market. They failed to push price higher. Then at one point the sellers stepped in, they drove price lower, and then we had a very nice downside reversal. Let's look at another example. So you can see here we are in an uptrend. When we zoom in a little bit, very wide swings, but you can see we are mostly making higher highs and higher lows. This is again not the ideal structure and the ideal trend structure, but not always do we get textbook signals and textbook markets. So it is important that you also know how to deal with such markets if you don't have the textbook setups. And we can see here price is making higher lows, which is confirming the uptrend structure. Even though to the upside it looks a little bit messy, price is not always pushing or being able to push higher. So this is our first indication that although we are making higher highs, higher lows, we can see that here just by connecting the lows. We can see that to the upside it looks very differently. You can see sometimes we make lower highs, here again a lower high. Here we have something like a triple top where price just try to break it, we are not able. Then here the final exhaustion move higher, which immediately gets rejected here, and we close at one point here below this trend line. Also again we can see here a very important support and resistance area here. When we look back, can see that resistance, support, 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 and then we break it. We not only break the trend line but also this local structure here, and you can see that here a very strong momentum shift here where we go from making higher highs and higher lows to then immediately reversing with very strong selling momentum, and this is then foreshadowing another short reversal. And when we zoom out, we can see that here was a little supply zone. You can see that where price found some resistance. It did not lead to an immediate reversal, but then here once price pushed into the top here, into this resistance area, you can see that we respected it very well to the tick, and then this signaled then or foreshadowed this turning point with the high momentum break afterwards. Let's look at a few more examples from recent price history, and here we have something like a short-term uptrend. We can already see price is moving higher here. You can see that we are moving from here to here, but the trend structure is not ideal. We have a large range in between. Then we have this short-term top here and this market phase. Very interesting. You can see price is then making again higher highs, and then here suddenly on the right hand side we shift to making lower highs. Let me get rid of that quickly. And you can see here when we get to the local structures, we will get to know that as well. This is a triple top. You can see price try to push 3 times higher to get back into the resistance area, but we fail. We never really make it again. So we can see that here at that point we are making lower highs. Markets are not strong enough to push higher, which is a very good indication that there is not enough buying momentum. We can see that here we are making higher lows at the same time, which is showing that it is too early to enter short. We are just waiting, or we need to wait until price gives us this shift where we go from one market phase to another. And this then happened here. You can see again very nice break here of the trend line. We struggled a little bit, nevertheless we eventually broke below that. You have probably seen it by now already that here is a very important support area. You can see we struggled a little bit here, support area here, and then on our way back we broke it. Here we came back into it with this wick. We retested the support area now as resistance, also the trend line held, and then here we sold off, and now it seems like we are in a new downtrend. You can see price is making lower lows, and we're also making lower highs. So you can see that price is now in a downtrend. When we just look a little bit left, you can see where price is finding now a little bit support. Obviously here very strong support area, resistance, consolidation, support, and price is now struggling here a little bit, which could have been expected, but nevertheless after the trend line break up until this point there was a decent reward opportunity and a trade opportunity. So you can see again how we can combine our knowledge, although we are just getting started, how to read those structures and how to wait for those transitioning points, which is the most important factor of reversal trading, is that we never try to predict a reversal before it happens. We always wait for the very clear transition point where we break a structure. If it can be a double top, a triple top, it can be trend lines. As we will see later, we also use moving averages, support and resistance areas. And so we are always waiting for those transitioning breakpoints where markets are clearly going from one direction to the next one. And also we always look for this high momentum break, as we will see later in another video. Let's look maybe at 2 more market phases and then it will become clear, I think. And again, we will take a very deep look into trend lines later on as well. So you can see on the left hand side, we were coming from a downtrend. We are making lower highs. We are also making lower lows. And then here at the bottom, we have a local structure, which we will get to know in one of the next videos. But nevertheless, I will point it out because it's also one way of reading waves and trend strength. You can see price was almost always making lower lows. Here we had something like a triple bottom. You can see we found support here 4 times actually, but at the same time we were always making lower highs as well, except for here where we made a double top. So you can see here price struggled a little bit. Nevertheless, we broke here below that and continued to downtrend. And now let's see where we have a trend line. We can start here probably. Then we can see here we have our first point, the second swing point, and let's see where this takes us. You can see we have a little bit of an overreaction here if we draw it this way, but it is not a big problem. You can see we are just trying to make sense of the market, sense of the charts. It does not have to be too precise because we don't need to pinpoint the entry. We just need to find our transitioning point where the market goes from one direction into the next. And then you can see that here eventually we break above the trend line, we come back into it, we retest it. You can also see here is some type of area, very important, resistance becomes support. Here's another one a little bit higher, which is also important to know about. And then you can see here, once price has found support, we keep pulling away from this area and we start a very nice uptrend here. And so you can see here, we are breaking above the trend line, we come back to it, we retest it. At that point, we are now making very clear higher lows, and at the same time, we are also making higher highs. So it looks very different than what we have seen here, where price was still in something like a downtrend. You can see here, price was making lower lows. I said here was a double top, but you can see we never really broke higher, and eventually we kept selling off. So a very different structure. And we can just follow price and we'll see here. Let's just extend this one, actually looks quite interesting. So you can see here a very deep trend line. This is the origin, second, third, fourth touch point here. Then here, once we move into this area, we struggle a little bit, but you can also see, you've probably seen it already. We have a head and shoulders pattern here at the top. The left shoulder, the head, and here is then when we finally start making lower highs here. This is already then showing us that the trend structure is a little bit broken. Here we then have our important and famous flip zone. Support turns into resistance after such a structure. We are making now the second lower high. We have then our trend line here, which eventually gets broken. We keep making lower lows at that point here, you can see that as well. And then this foreshadows a very nice short-term reversal and short reversal. And where do we find support? Again, at the previous level, at the previous bottom here. And you can see again, even though we are not catching the absolute high, we are never going to catch the absolute bottom. There is still plenty of room in the middle, and this is how reversal trading should be approached. Most traders, when they try to catch reversals, they always try to call the absolute top and the absolute bottom, which is very expensive, and such traders will run into big problems when they cannot cut the loss, when they still think it's going to turn around. But in our trading, we always look for those transitioning periods, which are very far away from the top and the bottom, but this is our insurance. It gives us a lot of additional confluence and confirmation in our signals and our trades. So that is one way that we can avoid the most common problems that many traders have in reversal trading. And that is our first introduction into trend lines. We went a little bit beyond and looked also at structures, trend line support. We started already putting it a little bit together, but I think it's a good way of showing you what this reversal trading is all about. And we will then step by step build our knowledge even further. And then in the next module, we will get into entry timing, market timing, when we explore our first pattern together. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.